Here, Jesse Jackson died. Pictured here back when men dressed better. I'm dumb, who is he? Civil rights hero turned lib shit, but you know, you got to give some respect historically. It's you have to give some respect to the, you know, the historical precedent. Um, Not everyone can be on their game 24/7 for their entire lives. It's ran for president back in 88. 88, huh? What a suspicious year to run for president. I don't know about that one. Just a delightful clip. Saw Hassan retweet it. Wasn't aware of it before. Thank you, Hassan, as always, making me a stronger leftist, you know, of Chuck Schumer bragging about blocking agenda items pushed by Jesse Jackson. Really interesting stuff here. The Rego Park Jewish Center.
I usually begin my speeches by saying I'm glad to be here. I'm not quite sure that's appropriate tonight. That when I walked up the stairs, I was pushed. That when I came here... Now, if you don't want to hear the other side, then don't stay in this room. Go wait for your candidate and listen to him and make yourself feel good. Okay?
Boy's accent. This is actually what New Yorkers sounded like before the past 20 or so years. Modern international before woke, basically. Modern international culture and like the standard speaking English has basically obliterated regional US accents. This was authentically what everyone sounded like back then. Go look at literally any on the street clips from New York or New Jersey or whatever from the 90s or before.
Hey, if you don't want to listen to the other side, please leave. I may not convert you to my point of view, but I will tell you something. If you believe in your argument, you can withstand very easily the argument from the other side. And so if you can't, then I ask you to leave. Let me remind you the last time I was booed publicly, and this was the last time, was something you all abhorred, because I was the leader in the fight against the pro-Palestinian Jackson plank at the Democratic Convention. And I got up on that platform and I said just what I thought. And certain other states got up and booed my speech.
Back then, when there was less public pressure on Israel, Chuck Schumer could be honest and say that he was opposed to pro-Palestinian sentiment. Now he has to like hide it, and he's like, well, I support Israel's right to defend itself. Like he has to engage in the defensive euphemism. But back then he could be honest and engage in the offensive language of I'm just against the pro-Palestinian. Now he would be like, no, I'm pro-Palestinian, I'm just anti-Hamas. But back then he was honest, yeah.
So that just as tonight, the MC had to get up and say, give the man a chance to be heard. Well, you know what, ladies and gentlemen? Perhaps it didn't surprise me that it happened there.
This is from 89.
It surprises me that it happened here.
Yeah, back when he was just a humble member of the House of Representatives. Then he would go on to be a senator, and the Senate Majority Leader and the Senate Minority Leader, and the Democrats would just unambiguously embrace him and everything that he represents for decades and decades, you know?
Folks, hey, Bob, I deserve a little courtesy, don't you think? Don't you think, Bob?
Anyway, this is about Jesse Jackson, not Chuck Schumer, but I do think it's very telling that, like, at this point in Chuck Schumer's career, when he was still very much a very, very grown man, he could say, yeah, I'm that guy who blocked the civil rights heroes pro-Palestinian agenda item. Yeah. Yeah.
In conclusion, there's one man there who's clapping his hands and booing. It reminds me of the old Sid Caesar routine like this.
Great. Wonderful. Bernie Sanders tribute? Oh, that's nice. Oh, no, this isn't a tribute. This is from 2024.
I happen to believe that Jesse Jackson is one of the very most significant political leaders in this country in the last 100 years. And I think sometimes...
See, men just don't dress the way they used to. I'm sorry, folks. You saw those older photos of him.
We take for granted all that he has accomplished and the walls that he has broken down. Today, when people say, black and white and Latino and Asian American and Native American and gay and straight have got to stand together, people were not talking like that 30 or 40 years ago. So I'm not gonna...
Well, the Black Panther Party was talking like that 60 years ago, but
List for you.
It is true that after the death of the civil rights movement in the 70s basically was when it was around the 60s, but like in the 70s, it tapered off. You got Reaganism. Like there was a big cultural backlash, and Jesse Jackson was part of the pushback against that. So yeah, I thought I think he's a lib shit? Yes. But do I think Charlie Kirk carried the flame to an extent? I do. Yeah, it's hard to, it's not an all or nothing thing. He's lived a very long time. He's had a very big life. A lot of stuff happened.
The achievements of Jesse Jackson, how often he has ended up in jail fighting against racism and segregation. You know how many countless, probably hundreds and hundreds of demonstrations he has led in every part of this country. You all know his work with Dr. King, his historic and enormously important work.
I've heard of it.
But Jesse's contribution to modern history is not just bringing us together, it is bringing us together around a progressive agenda.
Reminding us of what he looked like back then. It's like, no. He wasn't always an old man. This is an L take. Jesse Jackson's always been a divisive scumbag. Okay, listen. Has Jesse Jackson done and engaged in some really unnecessary, like, race baity shit? Yeah, for sure. But that's not, like, his entire legacy. It's pretty... I think the problem is, I think, the big... How do I put this? The problem is that we had a really rough transition between modern day woke and the 1960s. Because in the 1960s, the progressive movement then, like in the context of civil rights, right, had a lot of people saying a lot of shit that today you really couldn't say. Back then, there were people, even some politicians, who were just openly saying shit like, the white man has trampled on the rights and the dignity and the labor of the black man for centuries, and today we are taking back, etc. Like very, like, revolutionary language, right? And the problem is that, like, the guys saying that shit, for the most part, got COINTELPRO'd. A lot of the people who said that literally were just killed, Malcolm X or Hampton or whatever. And a lot of the rest of them just got kind of like dissolved into the cultural, because the idea was like, after the Civil Rights Act passed, what's the point of the Black Panther Party? You're equal now. And that you have this big like fake meritocratic pushback, right? This big wave of this sentiment of like, well, now you just sound hysterical. Like, okay, maybe your crazy civil rights talk was founded back when it was literally Jim Crow days, but now we're past that. So what are you going on about? And then you have Reagan, and you have this broader push, and for a while no one even talked about it. And the problem with people like Jesse Jackson is that you've lived in both worlds, right? You're alive today. Well, not today, but like yesterday. Jesse Jackson was alive yesterday. He's been alive for a while, but you were also around the 60s. So how do you translate a lot of that sentiment back then into modern day, like, intersectional third wave progressive movement, And I think the answer is like, you stumble a bit, A lot of the shit Jesse Jackson has said, a lot of the stuff that he said that I disagree with, feels like a weird middle grounding between two axes of rhetoric, if that makes any sense. You know what I mean? I'm not saying that he's been perfect the whole time. I'm just saying, like, I think a lot that explains a lot of the stuff that he said. Jesse Jackson's platform in 1988 was pretty radical for the time. Yeah, oh no, yeah, for sure. No, for sure. He was in many respects quite goated, yes. Is it that the black community became more conservative? The black community did become more conservative, like by a lot. Um, and the main reason for that is because the CIA and crack cocaine. Basically, kind of, entirely, yeah. So back in the Jim Crow days, I'm speaking very, very generally, but back in the Jim Crow days, black people in the United States. See, I'm getting COINTEL. My mouth is getting COINTELPRO'd like as I speak. Back in those days, the whole point of systemic oppression is that you maintain this axis of power directed against the underclass, right? So back then, the direction was it was maintained via like literal legal second class citizenship status. Black people were literally like less than white people in many respects legally. So like simple, right? So because of that, you know, black people were allowed to live lives that were like a facsimile of what white people were allowed to have, just, you know, lesser. Black communities, in many respects, looked a lot like white communities. They were just poorer and disadvantaged, but altogether there was a similarity, you know? The problem was after the Civil Rights Act was passed, you have this new surge of like, well, okay, how the fuck do we oppress black people now? Like, we can't get away with doing a lot of this bad legal stuff. How do we oppress them now? And the axis that ended up getting settled on was urban decay, a process that had already begun in the 1960s, but became like exacerbated and weaponized. You have urban decay and you have white flight. So you have a lot of industrial jobs leaving like urban centers and white people leaving urban centers, taking their money into the suburbs that were built but not allowed to black people because they weren't allowed to benefit from the GI program. So white flight ended up pulling a fuck ton of money out of these city cores. So you get city cores that are predominantly immigrant and black and very poor with very few jobs. And then the CIA starts tossing crack everywhere. And what do you get? American gang epidemic. And the problem is a lot of these gangs are black. A lot of them run drugs because it's the only way to make money in these communities, you know? Very, very bad, very self-cannibalizing. So a lot of older black people become more conservative because from their perspective, right? Because the average person, black or otherwise, is not like crazy politically educated, you know? From their perspective, they had a good thing going in the 1960s. Black people won their legal rights by being dignified, which is true, right? Like, whether you're talking about the Black Panther Party, Malcolm X, Martin Luther King Jr., black people were out there in the streets being very, like, respectable, very civility politics pilled, you know? Like, am I not a man? We're all out here wearing suits or whatever. But then a lot of these older black people, right? They get jobs and they have kids. They blink and it's the mid 80s. And now all of a sudden, the crime rate in New York City is like one person out of every one person. Black gangs are everywhere running drugs. And all these black youth, they're thugs, they've got the pants and the guns, and it's like, what the fuck happened? And a lot of older black people from this, they drew the conclusion that the younger black generation grew up entitled to equality and they had abandoned the decency and civility that ended up winning black people their rights in the first place. Now, this is wrong, obviously. What happened to the black communities was like a very deliberate, directed effort to economically deprive them. But again, like the average black parent is just a person. They're not like a fucking, you know, sociology teacher or a poli-sci teacher or whatever. So they see like, okay, in my day, black people went outside wearing suits and we got our rights. And today, black people go outside wearing tank tops and like sagging pants and they have guns and now everything's bad again, you know? And so a lot of them ended up getting really, really, really red pilled by like the Joe Biden like crime bill, you know? The bit like super criminals. The idea like the only way for black people to get their rights back and for equality to be achieved now is to crack down on these like unruly youth, you know? That's the gist of it. So look, it's been a long road and a bunch of struggles. By the way, we're still in that era. Older black Democrats tend to vote conservative on law and order stuff for exactly this reason. A lot of them were just born around the civil rights era, and then they saw this massive urban decline, the rise of black gang warfare, you know, drug peddling, and they're like, holy shit, it was the sagging pants. Not literally, they're like, well, it was the lack of family values and morals and so on, but like it's like a respectability politics thing, you know? So that now they're very, and that's why there's a stereotype about how black parents tend to be like really, like especially boomer black parents, like 60s or older, tend to be like really fucking Hitlerite about civility, like literally like smack you around unless you dress properly, or you need to carry yourself. You better not talk the wrong kind of black, because there's a kind of AAVE that's associated with like the civil rights era, and a kind that's associated with like post civil rights like hip hop music, and they hate slang that comes from after like the 1970s and stuff. You understand what I'm talking about? But Jesse Jackson has been there through all of this, right? Like he literally from like day one to now, well, not right now, but yesterday, through this whole process. So like I do sympathize with how how difficult it must be to like adjust your rhetoric over time to this weird shifting landscape, you know? But they also seem to be more conservative economically too. Yeah, because the idea, the push for black equality was framed as this like American dream meritocracy. The idea that like the way for black people to succeed is to succeed in capitalism. So they view socialism as a kind of like a fool's errand, or they view it as like a false promise, like a government man telling you like, we'll give you lots and lots of welfare. Like even if it sounds nice, it's a ploy to make you weak and dependent. Also, never forget the U.S. overthrowing the black socialist leader of Grenada was in part because of fears of black socialist radicalization in Grenada spreading to black American communities. Oh, yeah. No. It's, again, like, and the more you read into it, the more like ammunition you get to this point. But yeah, the extent to which the sort of not cultural downfall, I guess, but like the reinforced oppression of black people post civil rights was a deliberate op by American intelligence is really obvious and not even remotely controversial. You know, this is controversial only when you're arguing with like regime pilled people. It's not even remotely ambiguous based on the historical evidence. It's a fact of life, you know. How's CNN covering it?
Civil rights icon, the Reverend Jesse Jackson, whose towering presence and vision reshaped the Democratic Party and the country, has died at the age of 84. His family put this statement on Instagram. Our father was a servant leader, not only to our family, but to the oppressed, the voiceless, and the overlooked around the world. We ask you to honor his memory by continuing the fight for the values he lived by.
God, dude, CNN, legitimately, you need to fix your shit. I don't know what the fuck is wrong with you. Every other video of yours has this, like every minute. It's crazy. Why don't they just not have it? It's CNN.
And Abby Phillip has a look at Jesse Jackson's life and legacy.
Jesse Jackson's life was defined by a relentless fight for justice and equality.
I was born in Greenville, South Carolina, in rampant, radical racial segregation. I had to be taught to go to the back of the bus or be arrested.
Those early experiences drove Jackson to join the civil rights movement.
The fact is, against the odds, we knew there were great odds, we were winning.
In 1965, he began working for Reverend Martin Luther King Jr.
I learned so much from him, such a great source of inspiration.
King named Jackson to lead Operation Breadbasket in Chicago, an economic justice campaign for black people. However, some say King was frustrated by
Picture of Jesse Jackson meeting Fidel Castro. Yeah, it really is crazy how far we've fallen. Modern day progressive leaders would never. Well, I guess Hassan's going to Cuba. So maybe truly the Jesse Jackson of our time.
Jackson's brashness and ambition.
I'm sure he thought I needed more time. I was 24 years old.
Both men were in Memphis in April 1968 to support striking sanitation workers. King and other civil rights leaders were staying at the Lorraine Motel.
He said, Jesse, you know, you don't even have on a shirt and tie. You don't even have on a
60s white collared shirts do go hard. These are not white shirts, but these are nice shirts, yeah.
tie. We're going to dinner. I said, Doc, it does not require a tie, just an appetite. We laughed. I said, Doc, and the bullet hit. Everything changed at that moment. It was a defining moment in the history of our struggle.
With King gone, his movement was adrift. Years later, Jackson formed Operation Push, pressuring businesses to open up to black workers and customers and adding more focus on black responsibility, championed in the 1972 concert Wattstacks.
In Watts, we have shifted from burn, baby, burn to learn, baby, learn.
And he expanded his own global reach too, helping to free U.S. Lieutenant Robert Goodman, who was held by Syria after being shot down, and later other Americans held in Cuba and Serbia.
I learned how to negotiate as an African American growing up among white people. You have to negotiate every day.
Why has no one been able to pick up the mantle like MLK, the deep state? Dude, the reason why they have so much easier of a time organizing than us is because they're all billionaires and they all go to the same country clubs and meet at the same golf courses. It's incredibly easy for them to get people to do what they want because they have enormous amounts of money and they control the airwaves. You're always fighting like really, really far uphill, you know?
The Reverend set his sights on the White House in 1984.
And they do touch children, yes.
They're coming back to the inner cities. So I learned a lot during that period.
First thought of as a marginal candidate, Jackson finished third in the primary race with 18% of the vote. That campaign almost went off the rails when Jackson used an ethnic slur to refer to New York Jews.
There's mistakes and they hurt.
He ran again in
wait, which one? Say it.
1988. This time, doubling his vote count and finishing in second in the Democratic race.
Keep hope alive on tomorrow night.
At the time, it was the farthest any black candidate had gone in a presidential contest.
But 20 years later, when President Barack ran, we were laying the groundwork for that season.
In 2017, Jackson had a new battle to fight, Parkinson's disease.
Rip.
But that didn't stop him.
If you hold on, if your cause is right and your grip is tight, you'll make it.
Late in life, he was still fighting. He was arrested in Washington while demonstrating for voting rights. His silent presence at the trial of Ahmaud Arbery's killers prompted defense lawyers to ask that he leave the courtroom. Jackson stayed.
I am somebody. I am somebody.
From the Jim Crow South through the turbulent 60s and into the Black Lives Matter movement, Jesse Jackson was a constant, unyielding voice for justice.
May his memory.
I like how they throw in the anti-Semitic slur thing in there, you know. I feel like kind of tonally out of line with everything else here, but sure.
Be a blessing. That was CNN's Abby Phillip reporting. She even wrote a
the
book
Israel quota
about Jesse Jackson. Reverend Jackson is survived by his wife, Jacqueline, their children, grandchildren, and extended family. Joining us today.
He used the H slur. I'm going to be real with you. I genuinely do not know any slurs for Jewish people that begin with H. This is not your invitation to start typing them.
In the group chat, Jeff Zeleny, CNN Chief National Affairs Correspondent, Chuck Rocha, Democratic strategist and former advisor to Bernie Sanders' presidential campaigns, and Ashley Davis, former White House official under President George W. Bush. Jeff, I want to start with you. You actually just finished reading Abby's book, A Dream Deferred. And we were talking about how Jesse Jackson served as sort of the bridge from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., he was his protege, to President Obama, to present day. I mean, he kept fighting till the very end.
There's no doubt about it. And the towering legacy and figure that Jesse Jackson is unparalleled in America's 20th century. Barack Obama would not have been elected as the first black president in America without Jesse Jackson. Not because they had a close relationship. They did not. It was stressed. It was filled with tension. Their family did. But this is why. Because Jesse Jackson, through his 1984 a bid for president, and 1988, a candidacy for president. He literally changed the Democratic Party and changed the way Democrats elect their presidents. Gone are the smoke-filled back rooms at party conventions.
I mean,
where the candidate was decided, but Jesse Jackson opened up that process through making it a delegate fight. And Barack Obama...
It did used to be worse, yeah.
Seized upon that in 2007 and 2008 and built a grassroots campaign that was basically the modern day version at the time of what Jesse Jackson did, particularly in 1988. So he paved the way for that. But so much more. He literally was the bridge between the two. But to Barack Obama, as I think back to covering him during my time in Chicago, he moved to Chicago in part because he wanted the Black American political experience, and Jesse Jackson was that in Chicago. He left Memphis after Dr. King's assassination, and Jesse Jackson was there, and he moved to Chicago to start the Rainbow Push Coalition, really building the broad-based modern Democratic Party. And as Chuck knows well,
unfortunately, and I guess this is like the big negative lesson, right? It's that if you are a Black civil rights leader and a Republican strategist can just describe your life and career and be like, yeah, that's pretty good, it's probably not good for your legacy in the long haul, right? I mean, the problem at the end of the day is that the road that Jesse Jackson has taken has, for the most part, been he's like a living argument in favor of the anarchists and their view of like institutional assimilationism, which is that if you like the civil rights movement was like lightning in a bottle, right? It was like a flash in a pan. You had this real energy, and it did, stuff was done, even if the feds did kill off literally some of the more effective parts of it. But since then, what do you get? I mean, you get like tweaking reformism. The Black Lives Matter movement, it did nothing. The Democratic Party does nothing. Nothing does anything. And a lot of the shit that they did back in the 1960s nowadays, God, can you imagine? Like just basic tactics. I'm not talking the marches or whatever. I'm talking like the bus boycotts or the sit-ins or whatever. You do that in an organized fashion nowadays, people would lose their mind. I mean, they did back then, so shows you how little has changed. Good, it's unfortunate. It's wild how much this country's been pacified by the deep state. Yeah. It's not great. Trump responded to his death by posting 1 billion photos of him with Jesse Jackson through the years, so that's fun. Trump giving us the blue steel every time in the camera. No, very woke, yeah. Because like a lot of photos. Jesus Christ. I guess credit to Trump that, at least to my knowledge, while skimming through this, he didn't post any photos of him with other black men. You know? Where's his in memorial post? There we go. The Reverend Jesse Jackson is dead at 84. I knew him well long before becoming president. He was a good man with lots of personality, grit, and street smarts. He was very articulate. He was very gregarious, someone who truly loved people. Despite the fact that I am falsely and consistently called a racist by the scoundrels and lunatics on the radical left, Democrats all, it was always my pleasure to help Jesse along the way. I provided office space for him and his Rainbow Coalition for years, and the Trump building at 40 Wall Street responded to his request for help in getting criminal justice reform passed and signed when no other president would even try. Single-handedly pushed and passed long-term funding for HBCUs, which Jesse loved, but also, which other presidents would not do, responded to Jesse's support for opportunity zones, the single most successful economic development passage yet approved for black businessmen/women, and much more. Jesse was a force of nature like few others before him. He had much to do with the election without acknowledgement or credit of Barack Hussein Obama, a man who Jesse could not stand. He loved his family greatly, and to them I send my deepest sympathies and condolences. Jesse will be missed. President Donald J. Trump. Damn, I guess ally of Trump. I guess, man, that's like totally unambiguous support. Didn't expect this. Nah, like I said, Jesse Jackson's been neutered for a while, and also Trump loves people who are in his space. You know, he loves Bill Clinton. He doesn't talk about Hillary Clinton really, which you'd expect that he would, because that's like playing the classics, you know. He hung out a lot with Jesse Jackson, you know, because they're both powerful, influential cultural figures in the 1990s. And yeah, Trump was a Democrat back then, so forgot about Hillary when he saw Billiam's fat ass. Who amongst us, right? Who amongst us? He is serving face a bit in those pics, you know. It does make you wonder that if he joined the epic Mog-off going down, you know, between Clavicular, the Australian Terra Chad, the ASU frat bro leader. It does make you wonder how he would stack up if you think about it. ASU clears. You don't know. You don't know. Those full cut sack suits they wore back in the 90s, you have no idea. You have no idea what it's hiding. I can see people saying that Jesse Jackson is an example of power corrupt. It's not really. Jesse Jackson wasn't corrupted. That's not really what happened, though. The problem is more like the cultural windows for meaningful resistance closed after the 1960s. After that wave of energy, you know, the only opportunity. It's like you're trapped at the bottom of a well and the walls are slick. And in the 60s, there was a great rainstorm that filled up the well, and the water level rose and rose and rose. And for a while, it looks like you might be able to reach the top and get your fingers over the top of the well and pull yourself out. But then the rain stops and the water level drops and drops and drops and drops and drops. And the water is not coming back and you're not getting that rainstorm again. So the most that you can do is start doing this like incremental chipping away at the wall. But it doesn't really work because you don't have anything. I don't know. This analogy is breaking down. I think that materially the opportunity to affect real change ended in the 60s, at least in that sense. And since then, he's just kind of had trouble adjusting to the world today. I know this is real old hat stuff, but I can't believe the head of government communicates with the populace via things called truths. It's like decades of left linguistic critique boiled down to its bare essentials. Yeah, but I think the left linguistic critics probably couldn't have anticipated just how unseriously everybody would take it when it actually happened. You know what I mean? Like, you have secret police running around, disappearing people, and people's civil rights being violated willy-nilly, and people in Congress openly saying, like, we don't believe in the Fourth Amendment or whatever, but it's also, like, totally inept. Like, they can't even deal with some protesters in Minneapolis. The president will communicate via Truth Socials, but it will mostly be of interest to 80-year-olds, like people who would otherwise be getting their news on Facebook, and he will get less engagement on any one of his individual truths than, like, random lefty shitposters, you know? The future is deeply authoritarian, but mostly in the sense that it's authoritarianism carved out of apathy. You know, no one cares enough to get involved. To be fair, I think we are apathetic. That's not to be fair. That doesn't make sense semantically. That's what I said, you know? I said people are apathetic, and then you said, well, to be fair, they're apathetic. I know. I agree with you. Or more accurately, you agree with me. So to like Zizek saying that you used to say desiring the authoritarian father because at least you can say no to him. The postmodern father doesn't let you say no because of the way he couches his commands as if they weren't commands. Dude, that's Silicon Valley. That's literally the unlimited paid time off phenomenon. You want the boss who says you get 2 weeks time off so you can argue with him, or like litigate the boundaries of your time off. But with unlimited time off, no one takes any time off because everyone knows they're competing to be the guy who doesn't get fired next quarter by taking the least time off, you know?